course, as we count down the seconds to kick off, who better to help us break down the game and look ahead to Saturday? Finally, toe meets leather. JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur. JC, and obviously, of course, we've already chatted for a little bit this morning. Great
Absolutely.
to see your face again. What's going on, my friend?
Just had a great couple of hours there, and especially your segment. It was always fun and lively, and ready to kick it off. I actually don't live that far from West Lafayette, Indiana, but our kid has a freshman game tonight that we have to go to in Aurora, home of Wayne's World, and I would go to that Penn State Purdue game. I was sitting there thinking about it. I was like, man, that's not too far. I would have gone, but I've never seen a Penn State football game, but that's how much I am chomping at the bit to get the season kicked off and ready to see it for real. Very disappointed in week 0 last week, just awful games, but certainly ready for it to kick off for real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to start there, JC, with the segment we did. I do want to say thank you so much, man, because it's absolutely incredible coming on you guys' show and love the collaboration. I think it's giving a lot of value to the audience out there, and I know we've had incredible conversation. Speaking of week 0, man, Ryan Helinski, what'd you think about that? I thought that was an incredible game, personally, watching Nebraska Northwestern. And it's kind of funny because I feel like it's not exactly the same situation, but like I look at Nebraska and I'm like, we've been there, like in regards to their coaching situation and how they feel about the direction of their program. But that was an incredibly entertaining game, and seeing Ryan Helinski ball out, man, it just it's awesome to watch.
Yeah, just incredibly happy for him and his family, and he kind of looked like the quarterback, right? We all thought after that Alabama game, back when he got put after Jake got hurt, and things just didn't work out at South Carolina. There's a number of reasons for that. It's kind of, it sucks in a lot of ways because you kind of wish, you go back to that 2020 season, you kind of wish he was that guy. Then he did have a great year last year. I mean, Nebraska beat them, I think it was 59 to something last year out in Lincoln. But boy, he looked incredible. I'm a big fan of Pat Fitzgerald and what he's done at Northwestern. My fiance, for some reason, hates Northwestern. I'm like, that's like hating Vandy. How do you?
What did they ever do to you, right?
Well, she's a Notre Dame fan, and back in the 90s, Gary Barnett brought Northwestern to South Bend and won, and she's never gotten over it. It's unbelievable how ladies, they hold on to things, right? It's like, so she's sitting there. Nebraska goes up 28-17. I'm out on the porch on a phone call. I hear her yelling profanity at Northwestern. And then all of a sudden I hear, "No, you idiot!" And that's when the onside kick happened, and ultimately the Cornhuskers lost. I hate that for their fans. They have some of the best fans in the country. 10,000 Huskers went to Ireland to watch this game.
They deserve better. Like they deserve better.
And it's tough because who would you not hire? Who would you hire except for Scott Frost back when Scott Frost got that job? Yeah. He turned down Florida to go there. And it's like, and it's just cringy that it didn't work out. But, oh, well, onward and upward. But I was very happy for Ryan, and just a very that whole situation, 2019, 2020, it was toxic in a lot of ways. And didn't really have a lot. It's hard to blame one person for it because there was so much going on. But certainly I'm just happy because look, Chris, he's going to end up, if he keeps this up at Northway, he's going to drafted in the first round, second round. He's going to end up being an NFL football player. So I thought he's well on his way, and certainly was happy. But that was the highlight of week 0. The rest of those games reminded me of the 2020 season when nobody played defense, poor tackling, awful football. Yeah. North Carolina, my God, they played a team with half a roster, and then they're soft and struggling. So anyway, but that was that for that. But yeah, certainly September 1st, man, just excited to get it kicked off tonight. Excited to watch ball. And certainly fired up for Saturday.
Yeah, I was going to say, JC, of course, we got more football on tonight. SEC football, Tennessee takes the field. Mizzou, we got the backyard brawl. But let's talk about the Gamecocks. The state of this football team heading into Saturday. Obviously, again, kickoff now, I would say, about 55 hours away or so. So we are creeping up on it. it's crazy. In years past, we had talked about, I'm going to knock on wood right before I say this, but we had talked about, it felt like injuries were a storyline of previous regimes and previous teams. Give us just an update on South Carolina. It seems like they're in a pretty good space going into kickoff on Saturday. I think Corey Rucker's probably the one Beamer mentioned in his Tuesday presser that would be the most unlikely, been dealing with that nagging foot injury. But even Christian Beal Smith and Kai Kroger, it sounds like if they need to go, they can go, which I would assume. I doubt we see a ton of Beal Smith. I mean, again, that's just me making an assumption. But what you're hearing on that front, I mean, again, it sounds like from the health perspective, and again, knock on wood, fingers crossed, I mean, this football team's about as good a shape as it could be in going into kickoff.
I think so. And look, that's a credit to Shane Beamer. That's a credit to Luke Day, the strength coach. That's a credit to the nutrition program, which is the best in the country, I think, at South Carolina. You got to take care of your body, right? And I think one thing coming in, I challenge for Shane as a first-year coach, because he's not Steve Spurrier. He's kind of more like his dad and Kirby Smart, if you're kind of looking for people he's worked for. He wants the practices to be physical. He wants them to be intense, and it's more toward the Muschamp end of things with that. Spurrier would go out in shorts on a Tuesday and was obsessed with, I mean, it to the point it almost made the defensive coaches not happy, right? But last time I checked, Steve Spurrier consistently had better defenses than Will Muschamp. So I don't know how much to read into it. Shane has found like a happy medium because they are physical. They do practice hitting and tackling and intensity and all that. But he's found that balance. I almost thought that in the Muschamp era, based on what I've heard, some feedback from some sources and stuff like that, they worked him too hard. And so by the time, and if you ever notice, Chris, during that era, Carolina played much better when they kicked off at noon as opposed to like at night. And I think the kids were just worn out. I mean, I just think there's only so much you can do. 20 hours a week with college kids and stuff like that. You put in the work over the summer, and then practice is about, once you get toward game week, focusing in on that opponent. So I'm beyond impressed, even though there are some injuries. That's part of football. I'm beyond impressed at how healthy this team has stayed while also having the intensity and physicality needed to get ready to play an SEC football season.
Now, JC, let's move into and talk about this game specifically on Saturday. And JC, how good does it feel? We actually have a game to discuss. Thank God. Thank God. Georgia State, we'll start with them offensively. Obviously, by now, if you've been paying attention at all, you know that Georgia State, they want to run the football. They're led by that two-headed monster in the backfield with Greg and Jamias Williams, a guy we know pretty well. But they ran for 226 yards per game last year. And I believe, is their quarterback a dual threat guy? Is he also a mobile guy? The kid
Ranger?
Okay, I thought he was.
A little bit,
so that they want to run the football. That is obvious. Talk about the matchup for South Carolina. Obviously, rushing defense was a concern last year. I'm just looking right now. The Gamecocks ranked 93rd in the country, giving up 175 yards per game last season. And a lot of the same dudes return, but you feel like against Georgia State, a team that is a group of five, you should be able to have some success. You just look at the size matchup, and it looks like the Gamecocks have the advantage. Just talk about that matchup specifically, Georgia State's offense against South Carolina's defense, and what you're expecting to see on Saturday night.
Well, look, I think that here's one of the things that you got to look at. You got to look at the linebacker position, especially the Mike. And Mohamed Kaba is taking over that position this year for Damani Staley. He's starting along with Brad Johnson, and I look at that, and Chris, that's an athletic upgrade, right? The issue is going to be with Mo. And he hadn't had any problems like this in the preseason, but in the game it's different. You got to have eyes, right? You got to have your instincts at linebacker. You've got to make your reads and keys and all that good stuff. And so that's the concern when you're playing a team like this, because their running game has been proven effective at App State. Coastal does some things like they do. They do have a new coordinator, that kind of thing. But it's a situation where, I think that the eyes, are you going to be able to read your keys, understand the game plan, dissect what they're doing? at the linebacker position is going to be critical, and safety as well. You talk about the D line. I think as much as I love Jabari Ellis and thought that guy overachieved and played his ass off for however many years at Carolina, I think Boogie Huntley's an upgrade at that other defensive tackle position, and was not surprised at all that he won it. I mean, he flashed at times last year late. So I think if you have a more consistent Zach Pickens beside a Boogie Huntley, that gives you a little more oomph in the middle when they're trying to kind of gash you. Now, that may be more of a Georgia discussion than a Georgia State, but that's important. And I think, look, man, Cam Smith at nickel, I thought Cam tackled well last year. Sometimes around here, corners hadn't been the best tacklers, in the world. But right. Cam did well. I think he's going to thrive there at defending the run. I also think Darius Rush and Marcellus Dial, especially Dial, out there at corner when they're trying to clip you on the edge, he's going to have to tackle well and make sure he's sound. Jam Williams is slippery, right? So you got to make sure you get your hands on him and get him when those outside runs. But I'll remind people of this too. Like we, as Carolina people, we all fear the dual threat quarterback because we've seen it for 30 years, right?
The tale is old as time, Jason.
We're quaking in our boots here, right?
Hey, are we not over the years? I think we can all laugh about this. Are we not known for making guys look like Heisman trophies?
Wow, it's unbelievable. and look, we've benefited from dual threat guys too. Right, Connor Shaw, Savell Newton, those guys have changed games, but it always concerns Carolina people. And last year in the Vandy game, they threw the curveball with Wright, and that's why that game was close. Okay, so but if you think about this. When they've known there's going to be a guy that's going to run from the quarterback position, I'll point out Florida, less than 100 yards rushing. And then I'll point out North Carolina. Yeah. And North Carolina's offense was lethal when Sam Howell was able to get loose and use his wheels. I think he had 3 yards rushing.
They did a great job against him. I was thoroughly impressed.
And so that's kind of what makes me think, hey, look, Florida's a difficult offense to defend. I don't care if they're fired up or not. It's Dan Mullen. He didn't forget how to coach. And North Carolina as well with Ricky Longo and Howell and all that. And Clayton White had great game plans for those two opponents. So you'd think going into this one, Carolina's defense is going to be pretty prepared to go out and defend Georgia State. And I just think the key with stopping the run is going to be more about keys and physicality and sure tackling that may be a game plan. Because I think that if you don't tackle, if you don't read your keys, if you don't have good eyes, you can scheme it up all you want. You're not gonna stop people. So that's the key. I'm really excited about seeing Mo play. He probably has not been ready to go start the last 2 years. But boy, based on the word animal was used a couple of times. That dude's an animal. So that's what you want out of your linebackers, right, Chris? You want to hear them call it, yeah, that guy's an animal. All right, good. Because you start thinking about Lawrence Taylor and guys like that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him play, and I expect he's going to have a pretty good game, a really good game Saturday.
Now, JC, let's go on the flip side. The Gamecocks offensively matching up against Georgia State's defense. And I don't have necessarily the numbers pulled up in front of me or their entire roster or anything, but they struggled on that side of the ball last year at times. I mean, I think they played UNC last year and gave up, like you mentioned, like 59 points to them or something crazy. UNC pulled away in the second half, whatever it was. You feel like this is a game, and of course, offensive line. I talked on your airwaves earlier that what we most want to see is the offensive line get a push from the jump, not see some of the lapses we saw last year. But it does feel like as you look at this ball game, and what's so intriguing, JC, is, we've all been talking all preseason about Antoine Wells and Stogg and, of course, Spencer Rattler and all these additions. And what is the offense going to look like with Rattler at the helm? We're going to start to get an idea of exactly how lethal this attack will be. And it starts, obviously, Saturday against Georgia State. Just what you're looking for on that side of the ball. And, again, I do feel like, when you look at the Gamecocks, just, specifically from the skill position standpoint, it does feel like they should be able to have a fair amount of success on Saturday night on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, and look, we're all going to talk, and I think it's a given. I mean, you and I both probably all week have talked about the offensive line. They need to have a good showing, and that's just an undeniable fact, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm looking for that. I'm looking for a good game plan, though. I mean, I'm looking for a cohesive offense. I think Marcus Satterfield, when you talk to people about him, and you look at like actually kind of the designs of his plays, his concepts, what he wants to do, it's smart. It's smart, but I think we all remember Rob Spence up at Clemson, right? He same way, on paper.
On the JC, on the Satterfield note, I know you probably watched the Welcome Home South Carolina football thing last night. Like,
sure.
I watched Sat, and I'm like, I want so badly for Sat to succeed. You know what I mean?
Too.
Because I like him. Like I love the way he was coaching Rat, and like I love the way he's recruited. And I'm like, I mean, obviously we're all pulling for our team to win and succeed, but I'm like, I just want it so badly to work for him. But you got to produce. I mean, it's just bottom line. You got to produce.
I agree, and I think sometimes Matt Canada, who kind of reminded me like conceptually of Marcus Satterfield. Matt Canada struggled at NC State. Dave Dorn fired him. Whatever. Dude goes to Pitt, and it all comes together one year. And the reason was that year they had players. They had Nathan Peterman. They had 2 tight ends. They had the running back who had a tumor, forgot his name. That's the year they beat Clemson when Clemson won the national title. Ends up going to LSU and running into Coach O, and that didn't work. But I don't think anybody would argue that Matt Canada is not a brilliant football mind. Sometimes it just doesn't come together. And whereas like with Kurt Roper, you sort of were like, well, his best games as an offensive coordinator were with David Cutcliffe on the sidelines. And, Cutcliffe outside of Steve Spurrier is probably one of the better play callers in the history of the SEC. And so whereas with him, you heard really bad concerns in game about getting frustrated, giving up, not knowing what to call, yelling. I mean, I've never seen an offensive coordinator worth a snot cuss and rant and rave. Defensive guys, yeah, but not that intense. And so whereas that was a situation that you kind of just looked at and go, it's not going to work. So that's different. I mean, it's something where you're almost wondering why didn't it work last year? And
to his credit, 4 quarterbacks. So let
Yeah, I mean, no,
there are reasons you can look at personnel wise why it didn't
fact
work.
of life.
I mean,
but I think goodness gracious, this team's going from that situation at QB. I mean, honestly, Chris, you got a graduate assistant that you're activated, like Dorn from Major League 2. I've activated myself. You go from that guy, and then Jason Brown, who I thought was probably a stabilizing guy. He wasn't ideal, but he did come from St. Francis, right? Luke Doty with 1 foot, and then to carry on Joyner. And by the end, we were probably like, well, in hindsight, we probably just should have started Joyner the whole year, and all that. And so you go from that situation to Spencer freaking Rattler, and now a healthy Luke Doty behind him, Chris. Luke Doty was a top 100 prospect. He's been in more crazy, unfair situations during his time at Carolina in 2 years than anybody else. And so, you're excited about that guy, potentially down the road. And you got Spencer Rattler, who was the preseason Heisman favorite last year. I mean, so that's an upgrade in personnel, to say the least. Receivers are totally different and really good, and he's got a lot to work with. So I'm just looking for, points on the board, consistency, that kind of stuff. They got to stay away from turnovers. You can't turn the ball over against a team you're favored against, because that gives them life. But just some consistency, and boy, I'd be, I mentioned Mo Kaba. I'd be not even. I wouldn't be more pleased if Marshawn Lloyd had a big game Saturday night, just because of the person he is and what he's been through.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important game, JC, I think, for multiple facets of this football team, just setting the tone. You mentioned a couple different guys, and you lead me to, I know you asked me this, so I'm going to turn it on you, is in regards to a key to Saturday night, because I think you and I would probably agree, and most would agree. I don't really even think I've seen anybody seriously like taking Georgia State in the upset. I think most believe the Gamecocks will get the job done. Now, what is the margin of victory? We will, a lot of us will have differing opinions, but so a key to Saturday night, not even necessarily to, and again, this is not trying to take Georgia State lightly in any type of way. I want to put that out there, but not just get the W, but to have a successful season opener to set the tone for this 2022 season. What's your key in regards to what South Carolina needs to do for 4 quarters to have a season opener where we leave and again we feel good about this football team and the trajectory of this season?
A lot of people, because there is probably not since the 2014 preseason, Chris, has there been this kind of excitement and anticipation. And so I think the tendency sometimes is to be extremely disappointed if a team just doesn't go out and blow the doors off of everybody in the opener. I'll remind people, though, 2012 team had a 4-point scary win at Vandy. I was there. I mean, I
remember that very vividly.
Very scary game. It hasn't always been, even even great teams that win it all. Their openers aren't always things of beauty. And so I think, unfortunately, if they don't go out there and play great and blow the doors off of them, they're going to be a lot of people that are not, I don't know. I'll remind people, even though it says Georgia State on the uniform, just kind of imagine if it said App State or if it said East Carolina or if it said Coastal Carolina, that kind of thing. This is how good this Georgia State team is this year. This is their year. Best team they've ever had. And there's no shame in beating a really good group of 5 team, by a couple of touchdowns. So, my pick is 35-21. I kind of got caught up the other day, and I said this on my show to you, in how bad is Georgia State going to be on defense. And if Carolina can just go out and establish the run, kind of like they did against North Carolina last year where they're just running all over them. I kind of talked myself into a 51-21 prediction, but then I kind of got home and backed off. And it's like, I've thought 35-21 for a while. That's probably going to be the pick I make. And I think if they can do that, it's 35 points. It's what, 5 touchdown drives.
Yep.
And you hold that very dynamic offense to 21 points. I think that's a good day. Now that's kind of right there in the middle. If South Carolina plays its best, which you don't always do in the opener, it could be a lot worse than that. I mean, because South Carolina is the better team. They're more talented, all that. But I think in this type of opener, you go out, a couple touchdown wins, you cover the spread or whatever. I think you can be fine. Heading to Arkansas.
Right. JC, selfishly for you, I mean, for me, I would say line of scrimmage, get a push up front offensively. That's what I most want to see on Saturday night for 4 quarters. For you, selfishly, I mean, it could be Mo Kaba, it could be Rattler, it doesn't even have to be a certain player, a unit. Is there just, what do you most want to see on Saturday night from this team?
I'm with you on the push, right? But I'll say this, it ties into kind of my thing, a run game. I want South Carolina last year. The most disappointing thing about last season is you look at the linemen coming back, you look at the backs they had. That team should have been able to run the football, better. Now, there are a lot of reasons why in some games they didn't. And I want to see kind of what we saw in the bowl, when Kevin Harris was kind of the workhorse, but then you also attack the perimeter with Juju McDowell. Don't be surprised if this Dante Little Turbo Miller has some plays like that. Bill Smith, I'm with you. I kind of think they'll limit him. You don't want to wear him down and have him re-injure or whatever. But Rashad Amos is a guy, too, that I'm looking for. Lavassier Carroll, all those guys in the backfield. Jaheim Bell taking handoffs. South Carolina, this offense, which in theory is based on the Los Angeles Rams, right? So in theory, that's what it's supposed to be. It's not going to go far if you can't run the ball, and you don't necessarily have to be a run first team. You can pass to set up the run, and I think last year that was a big problem because Carolina could not do that. It was like teams were shutting down the run, selling out to stop the run. The passing game didn't scare them, this year it's going to scare people. So, I just think that the upside of this offense, as much as we talk about Rattler and Juice Wells and all these guys, is fundamentally grounded in the ability to establish a run game. Doesn't mean you have to go, 100, 200 yards a game, hopefully 100, but 200 yards a game. It just means that's going to help open up everything else. And that's to your point with the offensive line and all that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's where it starts. I tell you this, JC, I think what's so intriguing, and I'll lock in my official score prediction tomorrow. But as I told you earlier over the summer, I had 34-14, and my reasoning for that was just, I felt like early up to halftime, I think there's going to be uncomfortable moments. Because no doubt. I mean, and it's almost, JC, what's funny about it, like it's almost inevitable because, like you mentioned, like people are so excited. It's almost like if we don't win 50-0, it's like, we let them score one time. And it's like, it's disappointing. But I mean, you have to understand again, like Georgia State's also excited and they're also coming out to play good football. And you know what I mean? Like it's almost inevitable that people will just never be satisfied. But what I think is intriguing about this game, we talk about it's week one and we have questions and just the uncertainty of week one. Well, it's week one for Georgia State too. And I think what's, I think like the 49-10 predictions are a little over the top and a little outrageous, but at the same time, it's like, I think if you can get Georgia State in 3rd and longs, if you're good against the run and you let that secondary eat, if special teams were to play a factor, and there is a recipe on Saturday night to South Carolina having a big statement win under the lights, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's the deal, as far as making a statement goes. But, I always encourage people to be aware of it. And here's an interesting tidbit, too. It's like this is the first time I think ever, Chris, that a former head coach at South Carolina has led a team back into Williams-Brice in the modern era. Now, back in the day, I have no idea. Because like the guy that coached the Columbia YMCA may have at one point been, at Carolina, but and he was the interim head coach, obviously, but still, that counts on his record. You look at the assistants that have brought teams back in here. Skip Holtz scared the bejesus out of Carolina a couple of years ago. The only one that didn't do well was Rick Stockstill in 2006 in Middle Tennessee, and Spurrier beat him pretty good. But it kind of reminds me, as far as statements go, and this is not going to sit well with Gamecock fans, and I hope, honestly, this doesn't happen. Given the style of play, given what they do, given the former coach storyline, right? Ricky Bussell brought Louisiana Lafayette to Carolina twice, 03 and 07. 03 was I think Carolina got a blocked field goal to win the game, 14-7, and that was a highly anticipated year, and that was a massive struggle. And then Spurrier's 07 team, which climbed to 6th in the country at one point.
I remember that game vividly.
It was not a pretty game. Carolina got up.
Lafayette ran for like 270 yards or something.
Same offensive style too. And so that, unfortunately, that's stuck in my head. I hope I'm not right. I hope I'm just maybe crazy glue sniffer here with that. But maybe that's just like I don't know why I'm thinking that, but hopefully that's not the case. But those Lafayette openers were tough, and Georgia State has that kind of team that could come in here and play that type of game. So hopefully they do make a statement, man. I think it's going to be amazing, the atmosphere and all that. But, and here's the thing, this fan base has been through too much the last 10 years. It'd probably be just a good deal for them to go out and kick the crap out of these guys.
Like Juice Wells said, we just gonna kill them. We just gonna kill them.
And let everybody enjoy the new lights and all the new amenities at Williams-Brice. Go away feeling good, and having all these questions after an off season of of expectations. And then, unlike 2014 too, this is the hype and the confidence. It's been more internal. It's almost like we all have this big secret. Hey, the Gamecocks are going to be pretty good this year. And we're all talking about it. Unlike, whereas in 2014, you had Kirk Herbstreit and Greg McElroy, and they're making Kenny Chesney movies with the head ball coach. And I'm sitting there going, Sherrod Golightly's probably the best defensive player they've got. Anyway, so I think this is maybe it's just time to say the hell with all this Gamecock stuff we've done over the years and typical Gamecocks, and just go out there and beat somebody's butt, and then get some momentum and try to go do it again next week.
Absolutely. Again, JC, I look at it as a tone setter. Going to be a fun night for sure. Hey, let's move into recruiting, JC, because a big week in recruiting. I feel like it's sort of been forgotten because so much is going on. We're all getting ready for kickoff. But let's look back at Monday, man. Desmond Umeozulu, I think that's how you say it, something like that. Desmond whatever. Desmond he picks the Gamecocks. And I think what made this such a big deal, I mean, outside of the fact you look at his measurables, he's a 4-star edge. But who he picked him over? I mean, the Ohio State deal, I know we talked about him last week. Just I'll let you first expand on his commitment and just what that means for Shane Beamer and South Carolina football.
Well, I mean, this was for my money, this was the best, the biggest commitment so far. Number one, South Carolina needs edge players. Number two, this is your prototypical 6'6", 240 pound. He's a little raw right now. His high school team, for whatever reason, plays him at nose tackle. I don't understand that, but high school football, right?
Right.
Quick, long arms. He's how you draw him up. That kind of thing. And there's a need there. And so you start talking about him and Montague Rames from Manning now. Who's a Sumter now? Is it Manning? And you're like, wow, that's two bookends. So that's what you want, right? Preferably you get a third, but and then number two, he had an offer list from all over the country and was a lock almost for Ohio State. Just didn't feel comfortable there. Now they did some things that were what I call recruiting mistakes, but and they don't normally do, but they did. And so he comes with South Carolina. I'll tell you, I don't think Ohio State's completely given up yet. He's a no-brainer, And then number three, you look at like the area of the country he's from. And this part of the country can become a gold mine for South Carolina. Alabama's feasted up there before. Clemson's gotten guys up there. Ohio State, Penn State make a living in Maryland, D.C. South Carolina's got a ton of alumni in that area. A lot of schools from the South do, but it's the closest SEC school to D.C. So it's a no-brainer to recruit up there, and they've had connections. Pete Limbo, Shane Beamer, Torian Gray, they've all kind of worked their connections, and you start looking at it because right now North Carolina's kind of become a black hole for the Gamecocks recruiting-wise for a number of reasons. So to me, okay, so you can either sit there and, we're not getting anybody in North Carolina, so we're not going to be able to recruit and make excuses. Or you can just go expand your recruiting base and say, all right, well, we're going to get, 3 or 4 from here, 3 or 4 from there. And that would equal like the 6 we normally get out of North Carolina. These guys are better anyway. I think it's genius. I mean, you start talking about, Big Tree, Babalade, Zabari Sandy, who's a high 3-star Washington, D.C., tough, hard-nosed safety. And then this kid is an edge. And then what that does, Chris, that gives you 3 guys. And then there's a 5-star guy up there, Nick Harbor, who, is a freak of all freaks type. Yeah. He looks around. Well, God, 3 of the top players from this area are going there. Why don't I? So I thought that was a huge commit. Every year there's one Carolina target. I intentionally don't put a crystal ball pick in for superstition. And this was the one, and Carolina got him. And need, area of the country, athletic ability, recruiting momentum, you name it. Huge commit. And he's supposed to be on campus for the Georgia game. My understanding is Big Tree is going to come down. So I'm assuming Zabari Sandy will be there. And those guys will all be at the Georgia game that weekend during Nick Harbor's official visit. So a good piece of recruiting. Shout out to Taylor Edwards and those guys in the recruiting department for setting that up. So it's going to be an exciting time. And look, man, I could care less if Carolina signs anybody out of North Carolina if they're going to go do this in other parts of the country. You know.
And JC, you just threw me the alley-oop, I feel like, so I'll go ahead and slam dunk it before we get you out of here. Nick Harbor, earlier this week, Brian Doan, I believe that's how you say his name, of 24/7 Sports, he said, quote, I think South Carolina sits in the best spot of any of the schools, end quote. Now, of course, he expanded in that article talking about, it's still a long way to go. And, of course, there's plenty of other schools that are in contention. But I'll just ask you straight up, man, your kind of temperature gauge on where you feel like the Gamecocks sit. And it's crazy, man. I mean, all the positive momentum and the recruiting momentum, it feels like, hey, there might actually be a realistic shot the Gamecocks land this guy.
Yeah, I think they're in massively good shape, right? There are no locks in recruiting. And I don't even know that – I say that all the time because I'll never forget the Clemson media saying Travian Robertson was 100% to them, and it wasn't. I learned my lesson back then. I was like, So I don't think he's like close to a lock. I think Carolina's in really good shape. And I'll remind everybody about this deal, the NIL deal they signed yesterday with the sports marketing company and things like that. For a guy like Nick Harbor, who probably will be in the Olympics someday, right?
Yeah.
That type of NIL situation is very appealing because you're going to have major brands come in and want to get, sponsor this kid and have him endorsed because, I mean, heck, he could be the next Usain Bolt, on the track. I would be concerned about LSU if I were the Gamecocks. I think you always need to be concerned about Michigan because that was kind of the favorite early on. But South Carolina's done a hell of a job with this guy. I mean, and people ask me all the time, Chris, where he's going to play. I said, well, defense is probably in, but on offense, he's going to play touchdown because if he can catch it all, nobody's catching him, right? He's going. It's going to be like Forrest Gump, run, Nick, run. But I do think South Carolina's in really good shape. Talking to people around the program, they feel good about it. Like I said, is it going to happen? We're going to have to wait till November, December to find out. I do think a big crowd, a great atmosphere, and big Gamecock win on September 17th would help. But even if they don't beat Georgia, I don't know that puts them out for Harbor. I think it's more about the good time he has, all that good stuff.
JC, last thing, I promise, before I get you out of here. You did mention, and I forgot to bring it up, the Park Avenue, the new NIL, I'm not even really sure how to phrase it. I guess NIL agency that South Carolina has adopted or incorporated. I'll let you expand on it for those who may not understand. But, obviously you have Carolina Rise, there's Garnet Trust, there's other initiatives out there. But now USC is sort of taking it in their own hands, and it's a game changer in the NIL space. And South Carolina, they're the first. It feels good to be trendsetters, right, in something like this. Just expand for people who may still be kind of unfamiliar exactly why this is such a big deal for USC.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to be very honest with your audience here. This is not the last thing you're going to hear for the next few months. Just to keep that in mind, guys. It's big, and it's fundamentally different than Carolina Rise. Carolina Rise is for fans and boosters and people that care about Carolina to help the cause, so to speak, and to maybe, when you're talking about NIL deals with, incoming guys like Gigi Jackson or guys like that, and now Gigi has a lot of marketability. I'll use another example, like let's say Stone Blanton, who may or may not at some point be one of our clients, right, in the near future. Stone hadn't played yet, and he's a big time recruit and going to play two sports and is marketable, but he's not somebody necessarily that this new Park Avenue is going to be able to take to Chipotle and say, hey, we got Stone Blanton. They're going to be like, whoa, okay. So that's kind of where Carolina Rise is, and that's for fans and people that, want to chip in a few bucks or whatever to do. This is for guys that, and this is where this is going to help recruiting at the elite level, Chris, for guys that already have marketability. Like I use the example, and I hate to use it, but it's the best example of football I can think of, is Arch Manning. Arch Manning, because he's a Manning, he's already got, all kinds of marketability, because of his name recognition. Obviously, he's an elite player. That kind of guy, your 5-star basketball guys who are going to be lottery picks in 12 months. Those are the types of guys that, at South Carolina, okay, well, Tennessee's collective wants to give you $800,000. Well, guess what? You come to South Carolina, you're not just going to get $800,000. You're going to get $800,000, and then you're going to be, repping Bojangles or repping Puma or Adidas or whoever, which is going to be better for you once you become a pro, because you'll have that relationship. Right. And we all know, Michael Jordan, he made a lot of money playing ball, but he made most of his money where, endorsements. And so that's on the elite end of things. That's going to help, because that's where like, South Carolina, and probably rightfully so. I mean, I own a collective. I run a collective. I would be fundamentally uncomfortable doing what A&M did and Tennessee. And you're not going to see me in a garnet blazer flying around in a private jet going and signing some freaking kid, dude. I covered national recruiting for 15 years. I know who these guys are. I'm not doing that, right? And rightfully so. I think this is a game changer in terms of, how do you compete with the idiot in the jet and the thing? Well, you come at it with some professionalism, and you come at it with, this is not only going to put money in your pocket and your family's pocket now, but it's going to allow you to build a relationship. What if you get hurt? What if you do this? What if you don't go pro? You'll still have these relationships with these major brands and companies. Dabo kind of took a little shot at it today. So Clemson NIL is about education. I can think of nothing more educational than having a student athlete making connections, networking with major brands. That's really what college should be all about, Chris. That's what college is, to prepare you for life. I can think of nothing better to prepare you for life than to be affiliated with major brands, marketing, professionals, and that's what's exciting about all this. I can't say enough about Chance Miller and the job he and Hillary Cox did putting this together.
JC Shurburtt of the Big Spur Inside the Gamecocks airs every single day, 11 to 1. Be sure to go check them out. And, of course, our weekly segments on there. JC, I appreciate you taking the time, man. Hey, looking forward to kickoff this time next week. Yeah. We'll be talking about everything that happened against Georgia State and looking ahead of the game in Arkansas. And, I mean, heck, man, we made it. We made it. Congratulations to us all, man. I appreciate you sincerely taking the time, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And enjoy your weekend, Chris. Hope everybody goes out to Seawells and sees you guys this weekend. If I were there, I'd stop by myself, but certainly y'all have a big time. And next time we're going to be breaking down a game and looking forward to another one, and that's always great.
Yep, our first SEC game. It'll get real. It'll get really real.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, JC, appreciate you, my friend. Have a good one. Take care.
Talk to you soon, Chris.
Yes, sir. Great stuff. JC Shurburtt of the Big Spur Inside the Gamecocks is his show.